All right. Hello. Hello. All right. Hold on a sec. Ah. Hello, my friends on YouTube. Give me one quick sec here. All right. All right. It's been a morning. There we go. We are good. I think we're good. Here, one sec. All right, I'm back. Let's go live on Facebook. All right. Hello, YouTube. All right. Excellent. We are now live on Facebook also. Facebook forced me to do a whole bunch of resets. It took much longer than it normally does to set up a stream. So anyway, hello, my friends. It's Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. Oh, it is Sunday, July 13th, and I am now officially 65 years old. I had my birthday yesterday, and birthdays are very weird. Birthdays are very, very weird because when you're young, they're parties, and when you're older, it's just not the same. So anyway, hello, Anne. Thank you. Thank you for saying happy birthday. Anne says she is having trouble emptying her bowels. Could that be pelvic floor? 100%. Yes, indeed, it can. Absolutely. Constipation is definitely a sign of pelvic floor dysfunction and being able to empty incompletely. 100%. Thank you, Angela. Thank you. I have PTSD over birthdays. I do. And actually that's so let me just introduce myself because I want to talk about kind of some of the lifestyle things that happens after you have a diagnosis of IC. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I'm the National IC Support Group leader. Been an IC support group leader now for 32 years and counting. That makes me the longest serving IC support group leader in the world at this point in time. Yeah, baby. I never thought when I was growing up, when I dreamed of working for NASA, that I would end up being a bladder person. But you know what? It is what it is. You know what they say is find a need and fill it. Well, that's what I did because I needed help too. I'm an IC researcher. I do research. I have written books. I write tons and tons of articles. So if anybody's wondering what my credentials are, I have a lot of degrees, including a drug development degree and a master's degree in psychology. The IC Network was my doctoral dissertation proposal, how to bring support to patients who were homebound. Ironically, I couldn't finish it because I was homebound, but it's wonderful that 30 years later, we're still ranked the best resource in the world and the most accurate and reliable resource. So if you're looking for information on IC, information on pelvic pain, come on over to icnetwork.org. We have a lot of great information for you. In fact, let me move this so it's more visible. There you go. Summertime. The goal, the thing you have to understand about support group meetings and the thing you have to understand about being online with IC information anyway is that we want you out enjoying your life. And so, uh, whenever you come to a support group meeting, you have to remember that for every person in a support group meeting who's struggling, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that are doing great. So we have to put this into context. Second thing you have to understand is that different patients have different needs in support group meeting. Newly diagnosed patients need comfort, they need hope, they need education and information. Whereas a grizzled veteran, somebody who might have been struggling for a longer period of time, needs to be heard. The needs do not often meet because grizzled veterans can scare newbies, and grizzled veterans don't want to hear the basics, and sometimes you have to give the basics. So it is what it is. Normally, when I do these meetings, I usually do a little intro. We're just talking about anything related to IC. This is an absolutely open meeting. I do not have a prepared topic for today because yesterday was my birthday. And no, it's interesting. When I was going through my email and my Twitter feed this morning, there were a couple of things that helped me verbalize how I have felt. And it just kind of, give me a second here. Okay. So when you have a medical condition that is invisible, and that medical condition is incredibly limiting, and you might be 18, you might be 25, you might be 45, you might be starting your retirement. And all of a sudden, we have a medical condition that, number one, you don't understand. Number two, the people around you don't understand it. Number three, you might not be getting great support from your doctors. And inevitably, people start looking at you differently. People start putting you at a distance. So in my case, and this is when I see symptoms, I mean, they started when I was a teenager, but they weren't severe. And I was able to go to school and go to college and play competitive tennis. And I played tennis tournaments. One of the reasons why I stopped playing tennis tournaments is I started needing to go to the bathroom more frequently. And you can't leave the tennis court. It's a big deal to be in the middle of a tournament, especially if you're in your finals and have to leave. People look at you differently, like you're cheating in some way. And slowly over my 20s, friends drifted away. They would call, say, "Hey, Jill, you want to go play tennis?" "Sorry, I can't." "Hey, Jill, you want?" "No, I'm sorry, I can't." And before you know it, you are now living a very isolated life. You just, whoops, sorry. You just want to feel better. God damn it, please. I just want to sleep. And when you need support the most, people walk away. And it is heartbreaking. And then the little mixed messages start appearing. "What's wrong with Jill?" I can still remember one of my old tennis friends. She started, and she was actually a national champion. Best match of my life. I played against her. I lost in the finals in a tiebreaker. I was like 25 playing the women's national champion, like 50 player. Had the best time of my life ever. I didn't mind losing at all. It was fine. If I had a great match, it was fine. And then one day she said something that was incredibly dismissive and demeaning. And all of a sudden, I lost something important. And whenever I went and tried again, I would always get the look. What's wrong with Jill? Is she okay? And it's like, I'm here and I'm trying to be okay. And then you get the people who start going, the whispers, maybe it's all in her head. Maybe there's something wrong with her. And one of my dear friends from high school who said to me, and she was like with me the day that I had bladder pain for the first time. She said, I just think you like being in pain. You need therapy. And I just chewed her out. I said, are you kidding me? I don't like this at all. I want to be normal. How dare you? And to hear that profound judgment was shattering. And then she got married, and I went to the wedding shower, and I caught her whispering about me, pointing at me and whispering me, look, that's Jill. And again, you're the patient. You just want to feel better. You want to be included. You want to laugh again. You want to play games again. You don't want to be at home in pain. And again, that's really, really isolating. And I think that that's one reason why I have a really hard time with birthdays. Because before I see, birthdays were a celebration and lots of people came. And we got to do fun things. And then guess what? Those people slowly disappeared. And then 10 years later, it was like 3 people. I used to have a friend who I just adored. This is somebody that really interesting story. We played tennis all the time. And I was a really good tennis player. I mean, my cousin is a national champion. And I practiced so hard. And I played tournaments. And I was rated number 1, my high school team. I was rated number 1 and number 2 in my college team. And I played tournaments. And this girl was not a particularly good player, but she was a dear friend. And so I played with her every single time. And every single time she wanted to beat me. Every single time she tried so hard to beat me. But she beat herself. She didn't beat me. She was beating herself. It was just, all I had to do was hit the ball. And it was just so incredibly important to her. It's just like one day, you know what? I let her win. I let her win. Very deliberately. I wanted to make her feel good about it. And so I was very subtle about it, but I just let her win. I was trying to do a good thing. And again, after the icy hit, that friendship disappeared. And then all I heard was about how she beat me. And I've never ever told her I let her win. I'm not going to do that because that was that was important for her. But broken friendships, lost dreams, expectations, events are all affected when you struggle with a condition. And so this morning, this fantastic quote came from, I follow a guy on Twitter named Neil Harbison, and he runs a animal rescue in Thailand. Brilliant, brilliant man. Struggles with depression. Every day he is saving thousands and thousands of dogs, and he's very blunt about his mental health struggles and all that sort of stuff. This is what was said. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And then the next quote that happened at exactly the same time was, when you stop reacting to how others see you, life stops testing you with chaos. When you stop reacting to how others see you, life stops testing you with chaos. So I will admit that I've been very introspective the last year. Cancer does that. Um, I realize now that I have been incredibly worried about the perception of others because I remember those jabs when I was younger. I remember the people who say it's all in your head. I remember the people who say, you like this. And I have spent most of my life fearing judgment in that way because their judgment was so painful. But today, I stand liberated. You know, when the internet started, man, we were all worried about, we all got used to people saying this or that, barbs here and there. Got to have thick skin to be on the internet, especially if you're perceived as a leader in some way. And I learned years ago not to let somebody's judgment and a negative post upset me. The only people that are entitled to upset me are direct family members and direct friends. For somebody I don't know, I'm not going to let them bring me down. I'm not going to let them disrupt my day because there are people online who just love to fight. That doesn't mean I need to fight. It doesn't mean I have to react to them. If they want to fight, go. They can go fight in their lives. But this quote here, when you stop reacting to how others see you, when you stop reacting to how people are judging you because of your medical health, it is liberating because you have done nothing wrong. I have done nothing wrong. No shame, no blame. And if anybody tries to minimize you in any way, I want you to stand up, head held high, shoulders back, and say, that is not fair. I have done nothing wrong. I am hurt and I am entitled to your love and I am entitled to your care if you're a family member. And for your friends, you need to say, listen, this doesn't change my friendship for you at all. I adore you as a friend. But right now, life is a little hard because I'm a little bit of pain. But here's the promise I'm going to make to you. If you're in pain, if you find yourself sick, I will be there for you. Because that is the blessing of going through something like this. This changes you profoundly. And the way that it changes you is you will never, ever walk away from somebody in pain. Never. Because we know what it's like to be alone and in pain. We know how crushing it is when somebody says that it's all in your head. We have experienced that, and we, under our watch, sorry, not going to happen. I'm not going to let anybody do that to anybody that I know. But that strength is built on lots and lots and lots of little scars. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that I have PTSD over the struggles I went through early, the judgment I felt early, the things that I lost, like my tennis career. But that does not mean that I'm damaged goods. This is the price of life. Things happen. Whoops. You know what? My microphone is being really weird. It keeps falling. Life happens. Things happen. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Do not let IC reduce your self-esteem. Do not let IC reduce your perception of your worthiness. And that's another thing that kind of happens is we as women, we are just awful to ourselves. Men, not so much. Man, we start thinking we're bad mothers. We start thinking that we're bad friends. We start thinking that we don't deserve care. You can see a lot of patients who literally hide in the background. They don't tell their family and friends. They're suffering in silence. And that's just not okay. Brian says here, most of the people close to me are empathetic to it. It was easy to see who was not truly worth my time. Yeah, I mean, I still have this one friend that, God damn it, I miss her so much. Not once, not once has she contacted me in the last 20 years. I've contacted her. Not once has she contacted me. And I feel like there's judgment there. I feel like she thinks that I have done nothing with my life. I feel like I hope that kind of makes sense. Because they don't ask. They don't ask what we do. The assumption is, oh, look, there's Jill. Poor Jill. It's like, hey man, you don't need to look down on me. I'm very proud of what I've done. And you know what? I am pain free now. So screw you for thinking this. And this is not all in my head. So anyway, there's just this liberation. I want you to feel liberated because this is my goal for this next year is I want to liberate myself from worrying about the judgment of others. I want to let it go if somebody says something that may be a little bit demeaning in some way. That's my goal for my 65th year. So wish me luck. I woke up yesterday at 3 a.m. crying. It's like in my birthday morning. I just woke up crying. It's like, why am I crying? And it was just, PTSD about birthdays and people not showing up for birthdays and not thinking that I needed comfort on my birthday and losing those friends that would have normally been there, that I would have happily been there for them. So this is my last year of doing that. And I had a small, but I had a lovely birthday. I wish you could all come to my house. I really do. I wish we could all celebrate together, all of our birthdays. Because here's the thing, seriously, oh, Brian, you're not the lone guy with IC. Are you kidding? I work with guys every day. There are tons of guys with us. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway. So let's see here. So you guys remember, if you have a question and I miss it, please ask it again because Facebook scrolls really fast. We're live streaming right now. When I'm looking over here, I'm looking at YouTube. When I'm looking at here, I am looking at Facebook. I will share. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to be really, really blunt with you. Every single day, I have run the IC network for the last 32 years. Every single day, I've worked with patients. I have worried about saying the wrong thing and worried about how other people perceive me. Every single day. And you have to be really delicate. You got to be really accurate when you're doing this work. And I study, and thankfully, I think I'm very accurate. But I just try to be the best person that I can be and give you the best information that I can be. Hello, Kathy. Thank you for the belated birthday. Hello, Guy. Brandy says, I have seen 5 specialists and this new one immediately wanted to do pudendal nerve blocks in the left and right side, but I don't have the symptoms. I've looked it up. Brandy, pudendal, that's not, you don't throw this away because a pudendal nerve block can be very diagnostic. So our challenge here is, and if you look back at Dr. Jerome Weiss's fabulous book, Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain. Bless its soul. We just lost him 2 weeks ago. Or actually, we learned about his death 2 weeks ago, but it was earlier this spring. He talks very, very specifically in his book about believing that many IC patients have underlying pudendal injuries that are very subtle. And so a big sign of a pudendal nerve injury is going to be, oh, sciatica, or I mean, that's sciatic nerve injury rather than pudendal nerve injury. But when you sit down and you have pain, or when you stand or you bend over and you have pain, or if you're struggling with PGAD, persistent genital arousal disorder, or you feel like you're being poked by a pins and needles. Okay, those are really obvious signs that a nerve is involved, but there are also many subtle signs that nerves can be involved. So, for example, and I have always had pain around my left sit bone, always. It's just the little bone in your butt cheek on the left side. That my little left side has always been a hot potato, and I can remember 40 years ago, in my 20s, when I can remember playing tennis in my 20s and stretching to get rid of this pain on my left side and the tennis court, bending over the damn net. And this all goes back to the fact that really the origin for all of my symptoms comes from an old muscle injury when I was 13. But they would always have me roll on a lacrosse ball or on a tennis ball, and it hurt terribly every single time. And that turned out to be actually the start of a pretty significant pudendal neuralgia. So just understand that pudendal nerve blocks can be very diagnostic. If they do a nerve block and they can turn off your pain, man, that is fantastic information, because now we know that your pain is actually coming from a nerve. And now our job is to figure out, why is that nerve compressed? Why is that nerve struggling in some way? There may be some scar tissue. There may be a tight muscle. There can be all sorts of things that can make these nerves a bit more on the sensitive side. So I don't think that you've already seen 5 docs and they haven't given you any insight. This doctor is now proposing a new and different diagnostic modality. I've had 2 nerve blocks myself, and I had a steroid shot just 2 weeks ago, actually less than 2 weeks ago. It might not be a bad idea. What I would do is I would ask your doctor, what do you think leads to that? So one of the things that Dr. Weiss talks about in his book when he was diagnosing IC and pelvic pain patients is he always tested the skin. He wanted to know the health of the skin. So the skin on your perineum or around your sit bone, because he's looking for little areas of numbness. He was looking for little areas of restriction. And when he found that, and he was very, very assertive about making sure that we always act to calm nerves down from the outside in, that we can use a topical lidocaine on the skin. We can use a subcutaneous injection of lidocaine underneath the skin. He believed that a lot of nerve injuries were presenting directly underneath the skin, and that we could slowly retrain those nerves and calm those nerves down with little injections of lidocaine around that nerve bundle. So I would encourage you to get his book. Here it is right here. Favorite book ever. Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain, a Holistic Program to Relief. His discussion of pudendal neuralgia. Look, I just opened it right up to it. Great pictures. So here, for example, is a perfect picture of how a bicycle seat pushes directly up into the clitoral and penile branch of under the pubic arch. Great, great section. So I'd be happy to go through more of that. Okay, thank you, Angie. Brandy said, I know it's my PFD, and physical therapy and pain management will help along with trauma therapy I've been doing. I had to really help myself and research and weed through it. Yep. Okay, but in the same sense, you know it's your pelvic floor, but if your pelvic floor is funky, there's a very good chance your pelvic floor is traumatizing nerves. Angela said, "How do we sense stars?" I don't know, honey. I've never sent stars on Facebook. If you want to support this live stream, the best way to do it is to come over to our website, icnetwork.org, and sign up for our free newsletter, or buy something in our store, like our book, IC 101, which is on the back right there. Kayleen says she's feeling better today. Me too, honey. I did my longest workout at the gym this morning. I finally feel like I'm finding me again now that I can go to the gym. So I was at the gym for 2 hours this morning. I walked 3 miles and then I did a bunch of weightlifting. And I finally, after years, because I couldn't do the gym during COVID. So I feel like I'm finally finding Jill again. Tanya says, people just don't understand because we look okay on the outside. Absolutely right. Lori, thank you so much. Loretta, thank you so much, honey. Kayleen says, her cystoscopy said that my bladder is squamous metaplasia. What does that mean? It means you got some growth of your bladder wall. Metaplasia. By the way, okay, you know what? I did a drop-in meeting here on Facebook on Friday. I had two really, really unusual patients this week who called for help. One of them had profuse bleeding. So literally no history of urinary symptoms to any great degree, maybe a little bit of urgency when she was in her early 50s, nothing big. And then one day she's driving to a retreat and she starts to have to go to the bathroom. And her urine goes from yellow to pink to bright red blood. And then she had an enormous blood clot in her bladder. She was like at a gas station and she collapsed at the gas station and they had to call 911 and they sent her to the hospital. That has now happened 4 times in the last year where her bladder is just spontaneously bleeding. I was like, okay, that's really unusual. And yet so when they tried to look in her bladder, there was so much blood they couldn't get a good look. But her doctor described her bladder as looking like a placenta, bright red tissue and blood. And of course, this is not IC. Somebody at some point in time said this must be IC, and it's like, no. This is what we call hemorrhagic cystitis, and this is really severe hemorrhagic cystitis. Hemorrhagic cystitis is most strongly associated with viral infections. And it turned out that she was very, very immune compromised. And we know that these viral infections that infect the bladder wall that causes profuse bleeding turn on in patients who are very, very immune compromised. So she undoubtedly has. And then I said, listen, have you had mono? And her answer was yes. I don't remember how recent it was, but it was yes. So anyway, that was very, very interesting. So here she is bleeding, these really episodes. She's in the hospital 3 or 4 days at a time, these bleeding episodes. And you know how her doctor was treating it? DMSO installation. And it's like, wait, is your doctor treating IC out of an old handbook? Because if you have a lesion, we normally cauterize the lesion to stop the bleeding. That's in our guidelines. We have to. DMSO is not a treatment for a Hunter's lesion, and DMSO is not a treatment for hemorrhagic cystitis. It says, what do you do when you got a really bad bloody nose and it won't stop? You go to the ER and they cauterize it. And it was baffling to me that they hadn't even really gone in. I mean, they looked at her bladder once, and then they did all the tests. There was no cancer, there was no infection that they could find, and yet she's having all these episodes of bleeding. And it's like, girl, man, somebody's got to look at your bladder again and see if we can find a wound. And if there is a wound, then they need to treat the wound correctly and appropriately. Because she was bleeding as she was talking to me on the phone. It's like, this is not normal and this is not IC. IC patients do not bleed, do not have extended episodes of hemorrhaging from their bladder. Something else is going on. And then there was another patient who also had a virtually destroyed bladder wall, diagnosed with IC like 10 years ago, probably an estrogen atrophy patient. Doctor was treating her out of an old textbook. She was getting DMSO every 3 weeks. And it's like, what? Oh, wait, why? Why? What are we trying to accomplish with that? And her bladder just got so incredibly irritated that her symptoms were just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so the doctor was like, let's just do more DMSO, more DMSO, more DMSO. And then finally, the last time the doctor looked and said, wow, I think the DMSO is actually hurting you. We better back off on the DMSO. And of course, we know that the FDA approved dosage of DMSO can cause irreversible bladder spasms. We have research that's demonstrated that twice. So that FDA dosage, the 50% dosage approved by the FDA for IC therapy, 20 years ago, the top IC doctor said, don't do that. It's too harsh. If you're going to do DMSO, you do it in the form of a DMSO installation so you can get the dosage around 25% so it's not so damaging to the tissue. But now that we're phenotyping, now that we understand underlying causation, remember the old protocol of telling a patient they have IC, giving them Elmeron, giving them an antidepressant, giving them DMSO installations, which I did. I mean, I did like 8 installations. They didn't do a damn thing for me. We know that doesn't work. We know that. And the reason why it doesn't work is because there are different types of patients. You got Hunter's lesion patients, you got estrogen atrophy patients, you got chemocystitis patients, you got pelvic floor patients, you got pudendal neuralgia patients, you got widespread pain. So who is going to benefit from a DMSO installation? A tiny, tiny group of people. Okay, now I have to ask for a little bit of advice here. I have a smell in my house right now. I took up carpet last week. And now the smell of the soil is coming up through the floorboards and it's wafting in here and I don't like it. Any suggestion? I think I'm going to have to put carpet back down on that floor. So if anybody has any experience with soil smells coming up from the floors, I would appreciate your insight because it was fine with the carpet in there, but now that the carpet's not in there, it's coming in through the door and I do not like it because I am very sensitive to smells. All right, let's keep going. Caddy, if a food has lemon concentrate, like a small amount in yogurt, will that flare your Hunter's lesions? Probably. Yeah, because it's lemon concentrate. So it's not just a little bit of juice of a lemon. It's actually a lot of juice from a lot of lemons that have probably been boiled down and concentrated. So that would be a no. I mean, anytime you've got active Hunter's lesions, you really need to stay away from citrus. Marlia said, I would give anything to hang out with you, Jill. I'm at a low point with all of this pain, lost a level of relationship, but most of all, my motivation to strive because I pee all day and just turned into a windy whiner. It hurts to sit and I'm an artist. So that's just the kick in the ass. I just need a kick in the ass and to get over it all. Well, honey, it's not about getting over it all. It's about understanding that, you're hurt right now. We all have to adapt to whatever issues we have. I mean, I have high blood pressure, so I take a blood pressure medication. I got a bad SI joint, so I do my SI stuff. But I don't know. I mean, like the other big thing that I'm just facing head on now that I'm not doing elder care, is that there's nobody responsible for my happiness but me. If I'm not happy, I have to fix that. I can't expect anybody else to fix my perception of happiness. That means I have to do things that give me joy. And that's also, I think, a fairly important lesson that happens usually, maybe once you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, is you come to realize that, especially if you come from a dysfunctional home, well, hope that family will rally, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes you spend birthdays alone, and sometimes you spend holidays alone. Not that you want to be alone, but sometimes that happens. But in the end, I guess for me, the measure of a good day is if I can look myself in the mirror at the end of the day and be proud of what I've done. If I can look at what I've done that day with pride, then that's a good day. In the same sense, I have to do things that boost my spirits. Nobody else's job. It is my job. And that is why for me, finally being back at the gym, because I was a gym rat in my 20s and early 30s before the big bladder pain hit. And now I'm back. And it's like every time I go, it's like I'm finding me again. I'm finding Jill again. I am happy there. It feels good to work out. It feels good to be with other people who like to work out. I just like to do it. We're producing endorphins. Lori says lemon and yogurt floats are bad, but I have a bad lining of the bladder. It's possible. Kayleen said, Dr. Kircher told me about the pudendal nerve block, but I'm scared I'll lose 100% feeling in my clitoris. Well, honey, I guess there's two different ways we could look at that. Concept number one is PGAD is brutally painful. Having a clitoral injury is brutally painful. And we know that we have to calm nerves down. That nerves that are very, very hyper sensitized and hyper inflamed are a challenge because they're very, very hard to calm down. A nerve block does that. A nerve block silences that nerve. And pretty much in all the pain conversations at the conferences that I attend now, everybody talks about how important it is that we silence pain generators, not just one, all of them. Because as long as you have a pain generator, so let's just say you got a bad shoulder, let's say you got a bad stomach, let's say you got a sensitive bladder, and you've got, I don't know, an ankle injury. Okay. So you work on three of them, but you ignore one of them. And that the one that's ignoring is just pounding away at your nervous system. It's just triggering your entire nervous system. And as long as you have a trigger, your nervous system systemically stays inflamed and irritated. And so the general perception now is whenever we find a pain generator, we want to always work to calm them all down. So not treating that nerve is like, I think would be very foolish. But there are lots of different ways to treat that nerve. You can do it with a topical lidocaine and others. That's one way of doing it at the skin. I guess the question that I would ask Dr. Hertzer is, what is the downside? I mean, has he ever had patients lose sensation? There's that great quote, "The greatest gift that a woman can give a man is to risk her life to bear his child." Because when you carry a child, it is inherently dangerous and life-threatening. Carrying a child and birthing a child can cause physical damage. I have worked with young mothers in their 20s who were completely incontinent because they suffered catastrophic injuries during childbirth. Um, and so, and the same is true after rapes and sexual abuse. They are physically injuring, physically damaging, and they are injuries and trauma. It's very hard because they're in a place that you can't see, and they're in a place that can be incredibly disruptive to your life. I wouldn't walk away from the nerve block, Kayleen. I would just start asking more questions. So, what are the adverse events? How would you propose to do it? What medication are you going to do? What are the pros and what are the cons? And let's see what kind of information they give you. Tanya says, "Can you explain the IC belly? You ate a trigger and you're now flaring. I feel bloated only in the belly. I look pregnant and I hate it. And why do I weigh 127 in the morning and 130 at night, waking up again at 127? I wish I could lose the belly." You know what? It's hysterical because I now, listen, you got to understand that when you lose your breasts, as I did a year ago, you don't realize that your breasts cover your belly. And when you lose them, all of a sudden you see something you really had no idea was there, which is a belly. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Gosh darn it, I do not like bellies. So I have been working really hard to try to lose the weight I gained in the last couple of years because I have about a 2-inch belly and I do not like it. And I have love handles and I do not like that. Um, so, like a couple of days ago, or maybe a week ago, I woke up and I was almost flat, and I'm like, "Yes, my old body's back. I'm flat." And then I ate a carb at dinner. I look pregnant. I mean, it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? I mean, I looked like I was carrying a bowling ball. I went from flat to looking giant just from eating. I don't even remember what I ate, but it was a substantial carb. So, concept number one here is understand that the carbs and sugar can cause bloating. Um, Concept number two here is that the icy belly is really well known, where you wake up with a flat stomach, and then by the end of the day, you start to look pregnant, and you're not feeling particularly well. I've asked a lot of doctors what they believe the IC belly is, and it was Dr. Theo Harides who said he believes it's inflammation. It's just inflammation that comes and goes and comes and goes. Um, the fact that you're gaining weight, you're gaining 3 pounds during the day and you're losing it at night, I guess the question that I would ask you is, how often are you urinating? Are you are you eating a lot of salt during the day, which makes your body hold more fluid? That's kind of interesting. I don't eat any salt anymore because of the high blood pressure. So anyway, he just believes it's inflammation. It comes and goes, not something to worry about. And that's why we do better wearing yoga pants as compared to tight jeans. Shayna says, any insight on the hydrodistension? I've tried treatments. I want my doctor to determine if there's Hunter's lesions, even though a year ago it showed nothing, but this issue was mainly peeing. Well, a hydrodistension is diagnostic. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I have this smell and it's making me crazy. I got to shut some doors. Hold on a sec. Yuck. I do not like this smell. Okay. Sorry. This is life when you're sensitive. I've always had a very sensitive smell, and my environment is disturbed right now. Very disturbed right now. Okay. So the hydrodistension allows your doctor to take a close look at your bladder. Hydrodistensions have the potential of being helpful, but they don't fix anything. That is what I call a destructive therapy. The reason why you feel better after a hydrodistension is when you stretch the bladder, you break the nerves. And so all of a sudden, the nerves that would normally give you the symptoms of frequency, urgency, pain are broken. So you don't feel the frequency, urgency, pain as much. And you're going, oh, I'm better, I'm better, I'm better. That's a false sense of being better, though, because the nerves always grow back. And sometimes more nerves grow back than you originally had. So there are, some doctors who say, oh, let's just do a hydro, that'll help. You just have to understand that they don't fix anything. All you're doing is delaying your treatment, or you're just managing symptoms. You're not fixing the underlying problem. It's so incredibly important that we try to identify the underlying problem. So if they, do it and they find a Hunner's lesion, they need to treat it. But if you've got a healthy bladder, then it's time to look beyond your bladder. That it's not your bladder that's driving these symptoms. There is something else that's driving these symptoms, and we've got to figure that out. Could be tight pelvic floor muscles, could be nerves, could be a fibroid tumor pushing on your bladder, it could be endometriosis, could be an old injury, could be a Tarlov cyst hanging off of your spinal cord, could be a back injury. There's a lot of different things that can cause the symptoms of IC. And it could be a weird, rare infection. Especially now, we're starting to get, I've had a couple of patients the last couple of months who have had infections that I've never heard of. Really, one this week who it's a virtually potentially fatal infection that she had in her bladder, and it's like, how on earth did you get exposed to this? And it's a known multi-drug resistant nosocomial infection, and which means that you get it because you're exposed to it in a healthcare setting. And she had been directly exposed to it in some way. But they got to do that workup and make sure you don't have a funky infection either. Hi, Boria. Peggy says, hey, Jill, I had a bad reaction to DMSO. They told me to keep trying. After the third time, I said no more. That's when I was first diagnosed 234 years ago, 23 years ago. Yeah, I did it too. That's all they did back then. Anne says, so what is done for embedded UTI? Now, listen, guys. We have been dealing with people talking about embedded infection for 30 years. There is so little support for that among researchers. There's like only one or two researchers in the world who believe this theory that we have an embedded infection. So, or what they call a fastidious infection. And I've talked about this before. It was Dr. Paul Fukuzato, a PhD lab director. He was not a doctor. He was running a lab in South Dakota. I met him. I had lunch with him. Lovely man. He believed that every IC patient had a fastidious infection, which was a small infection deep in the tissue. And so we all sent him urine samples. He tested those urine samples. He found positives in everybody. He found me, I had quote unquote enterococcus and micrococcus. I went on antibiotics for 6 months. Didn't do a damn thing for me. And when we, back then, I did a ton of expert interviews. Those transcripts are still available on the IC network. I asked every single doctor, what do you feel about the fastidious infection embedded infection theory? Everyone said it's ridiculous. You just don't find it. Now we have next generation DNA urine testing. Next generation DNA urine testing is a brand new way of looking at urine. Instead of doing a urine culture, we look at DNA. We look at pieces of DNA. And that has now allowed us to see, based on phenotype, that most of us do not have an infectious origin. So patients who are pelvic floor driven have a completely normal biome. Patients who are bladder centric, on the other hand, they have found something called lactobacillus inners. So to give you a little context here, about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, they started trying to figure out what we call the urinary biome. What are the bacteria that live and populate our urinary tract? I mean, it's part of the Human Biome Project to understand how the human body survives and thrives based upon bacteria. I mean, we have more bacteria in our body than we do actual cells in our body. And bacteria play, I think that's the correct stat. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's the correct stat. Bacteria, good bacteria, play critical roles in our immune system, in nourishing cells, in digesting food, in processing food. Okay, so bacteria are not the enemy. Bacteria are vital to our health. And so everybody thought for many, many years that urine was sterile. It's not sterile. That's like they thought the stomach was sterile until this researcher in Australia proved that a bacteria caused stomach ulcers. Everybody thought there was no way, there's no chance that a bacterial infection can survive in the stomach. Well, now we know that Helicobacter pylori is the number one cause of stomach ulcers. So the assumption has always been that there's no chance that bacteria can live in the bladder because of the acid or acidic environment or the hostile environment of urine. And of course, now we know that that's not true. So we've had 7, 8, 9 studies on the human biome. I mean, on the urinary biome. All of those studies found normal flora that was less diverse, so not as many good bacteria, and an overabundance of lactobacillus. Now, of course, lactobacillus is good bacteria, right? So study after study after study, they all found exactly the same thing. Normal biome, less diverse, but more lactobacilli. And then Dr. Ann Ackerman, who is a biome specialist, about 5, 6 years ago, she's at UCLA, said, you know what? Let me do it in my lab. So she took the urine of like 90 patients, somewhere in there. And her first round of reviews found exactly the same thing. Normal biome, less diverse, more lactobacilli. But then she looked at it based on age. And that was the first difference. Because, and this was in women. So Brian, if you're still watching, I have not looked at the biome data in men recently. So this is what she found in women, I think. If patients who were under the age of 45 had a very narrow biome that was not complex, but patients over the age of 60 had a very abundant biome, that there were lots of different types of bacteria, not pathogenic bacteria, just lots of different bacteria living in an older body as compared to a younger body. And that relates to, at least in women, changes in estrogen and aging, and tissues become more acidic, which becomes more favorable to bacteria. Okay, anyway. Then she looked at it based upon phenotype. So she was the first scientist, researcher, to try to understand the biome based upon our unique phenotypes. And her work is a revelation because here's what she found. Patients who were pelvic floor driven, perfectly normal biome. Patients who had pain beyond the bladder, not in the bladder, but beyond the bladder, like in the vagina, etc., were tended to be dominant in E. coli. But in patients with bladder-centric pain, she found Lactobacillus inners. Now, Lactobacillus inners is a brand new lactobacillus. They only discovered it like 5 or 6 years ago. And the only reason why they discovered it is that they added blood to a culture medium. So this is a lactobacillus that grows on blood. What? How freaky is that? Well, when you look at what this specific lactobacillus does, is it actually behaves like a bad bacteria. It does not control fungus, and it damages cells. It literally damages cells. So now we have a finding of a pathogenic lactobacillus in some, but not all patients with IC. These are patients who are bladder centric. So now the next question is why? Why? Where did this come from? Where did this freaky infection come from? Lactobacillus inners is what we call an opportunistic infection. It occurs after you use antibiotics because it's like the first one to spring back and grow. And it grows so rapidly, it dominates the tissue. It consumes all the food, it pushes all the other lactobacillus out. So now we have a bad lactobacillus dominating the urinary tract after antibiotic use. So she is doing that research. And with Lactobacillus inners, as now that we know to look for it, they are finding more and more Lactobacillus inners with next generation DNA urine testing. Of course, a typical urine test culture is not going to do that. It's not going to find it. And so we will have more information on this. So what's the lesson here? This goes back to the embedded UTI people online because they all say you need to be on long-term antibiotics. But if you go to the classes on IC taught at AUA, they say, please do not do that. Because when you do that, you create the perfect environment for Lactobacillus inners to grow. And that's what we're finding. We're finding Lactobacillus inners. Now, there are some other funky infections that are going around. Enterococcus facilis it's certainly one that's concerning that we're seeing more and more of. But it's this hidden lactobacillus that might be a smoking gun for some, but certainly not all patients. That the great majority of patients who are pelvic floor driven have no infection. They are perfectly normal. It is, in fact, a muscle injury. All right. Lisa says, thanks for your help. Prevent and lactoferrin have been helping. Yes, and you guys, by the way, the lactoferrin should be here tomorrow. At my lactoferrin shipment, I was supposed to have lactoferrin a week ago, or maybe even 10 days ago, and it didn't arrive, and we were looking at the tracking, and it was being driven across the country in a mail truck. So it went through Colorado, then it went through Arkansas. The last time we looked at it was in Memphis, Tennessee. Why our lactoferrin shipment? It was heading east instead of west. I cannot begin to tell you. I think there's a label mistake. So, uh, what can I say? I will have it tomorrow. I raised hell with the company. They are FedExing me a bunch, and who the hell knows that the $6,000 order for lactoferrin that is floating somewhere in the postal service. Brutal. And let's hope that, I don't know if they announced resurrecting the tariffs with Australia. Lactoferrin comes from Australia, so if they put 30% tariffs on it, then it's going to go up 30% or more. You got to be prepared for that. We have no control over that. Kayleen said, my clitoris is constantly in pain. It was injured, but I'm planning on being a mom and I want to enjoy time with my future relationship. Dr. Kurtzer retired back in May, but I think my new complex gynecologist said she'd do it. Good. Kayleen says, I think stress is taking a toll on me. Here, I just had the bladder Botox on Friday during an IC flare. I have the IUD replacement and hysteroscopy on Wednesday. Good luck with that, honey. This is too much to put my car. Girl, you had a fender bender? No. Tanya says, I don't eat salt foods, but most foods have hidden salt. I was bad, made some veggies, dressed them with lemon juice and apple cider vinegar, had a flare. What a flare, girl. You know, it's so interesting that we were just talking about this last night at dinner. Is like, I don't eat salt, I don't eat saturated fat because I don't have a gallbladder anymore. And I swear, as you get older, your diet, you have no choice. Junk food is so bad and it's so harmful, and this high level of salt and these high level of all these other things causes such damage. Um, so I just eat plain food now. I mean, I don't. I just eat the veggies. I cook them, and then I put pepper on them. Maybe I'll put some Italian herbs on them, but um, it's weird. But it's healthier. I don't. I feel more healthy now than I felt in the last 10 years. I do. Liz says, should she order today? We're not going to put them in stock until we get it. Hold on. Let me see if I can check the tracking. If it's in California, I'll put it back in stock. So hold on a sec. Let me see. I mean, my best friend was with my sister and my brother-in-law. We all had dinner, and it was like, can we go to that restaurant? No. Can we go to that restaurant? No. Can't do that one. And we ended up at our all-time favorite natural restaurant. Okay, so hold on a sec. Let me see. Okay. You see my emails. Help, help. Where's our package? Okay, let's see if this FedEx tracking works. Well, it took me to the FedEx website. Oh, wait. On the way. Okay, hold on. Wait, there's one alert. Oh, okay, that's just that it requires a signature. Okay, where is it? Hey, it's in Oakland. Yes, it's in Oakland, California. Okay, it's in the state. This is good. So, let me. It arrived last night. Okay, hold on a sec. I'm going to put 10 in stock. But we're supposed to get 120. But all right, so let me go here. And I'm going to do, okay. So I just put 10 in stock, and let me just send a quick message. Just just FYI, FedEx shows lactoferrin in Oakland. Delivery tomorrow. I have people in my meeting right now who want to buy it. So I put just 10 back in inventory. I'll probably get my hand slapped for doing that, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So Liz, you can go over to the IC network right now, and the lactoferrin's in there. For anybody who hasn't heard about lactoferrin, it was exactly a year ago that we had an incredible study that came out of Europe that showed that red inflamed IC bladders with Hunner's lesions became pink and healthy, and lesions virtually disappeared after using lactoferrin, and systemic inflammation, as measured through blood testing, decreased throughout the entire body. Lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum. It is a protein found in milk. It comes from cows, and it is a front line of defense for our immune system. It has natural antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral effects. We had a study 3 years or 2 years before that that showed that lactoferrin was very good at preventing recurring UTIs. So a lot of people say, well, what's the future now? I mean, because we have all this new information. Lactoferrin, with that study, 28 out of 31 had a healed bladder and no pain and no flares after lactoferrin treatment. We've never had anything like that. This was a study done at a university in Italy. And there is an abundance of research on lactoferrin already. There were no side effects in the IC study. Lactoferrin can sometimes cause a little bit of gas and diarrhea in some patients, but in most patients, it's very, very well tolerated. I had no issues with it myself, and I'm very side effect prone. I have a blog on the IC Network website on the front page that has all the research with lactoferrin. It's just literally, what we're suggesting now for patients with Hunner's lesions, because it's the only study ever that showed Hunner's lesions virtually heal and red inflamed bladders becoming healthy. And again, this is not a synthetic drug where you have to worry about really severe side effects like Elmeron causing eye issues. This literally comes from milk. It comes from colostrum, so it has a much, much better safety profile. So Rebecca, who just says here she has Hunner's lesions, that's something you want to look at. Look at the lactoferrin, because we've never had anything that we could offer to patients with Hunner's lesions that were over the counter. Now we do. The other really big change is the fact that of the PEA calming nerves down. We now know that palmitoyl ethanolamide, PEA, causes a significant progressive reduction in pain in patients with IC and pelvic pain, along with other painful conditions like shingles. And so our PEA supplement, Peora or P-Leaf, which is on the back, that turquoise bottle, that's what I take, because my bladder is fine. I don't need to do anything for my bladder. My dominant problem is my muscles and my nerves. My job on a daily basis is to get my muscles healthy, and my job on a daily basis is to calm and soothe those nerves. And PEA has been life changing for me. I love that stuff. But remember, we're not equivalent. It all depends upon your phenotype. But for anybody who's struggling with pain, you could look at PEA. No side effects in the IC study. It's not addictive. It's not an opiate. No known drug interactions. That's something else that you could try before trying medications that come with much greater risks of side effects and addiction. So that's just such a huge difference for us to have something proven in a study to reduce pain in IC. Tanya says, when I flare, I feel like I pee more at night than during the day. It's just that you have less distractions at night, hon. You're going to feel it more at night because you have less distractions. That's all. Tanya says, when I flare, I feel like I pee. Oh, let's see. Hold on. Joanne says, is hydrocortisone the same as a cystoscopy? I have 100 lesions and doctors want to do laser treatments on the lesions. Your thought? So a Hunner's lesion, Joanne, is a wound on the bladder wall. Okay. So the way you look at that wound is through a cystoscopy. So a cystoscopy is a medical procedure that allows a doctor to take a more close look at the health of your bladder wall. They have to, if they want to treat the Hunner's lesion, the traditional treatments are going to be either lasering the wound shut, because this is an open wound that is literally getting irritated by urine every minute of the day. This is why Hunner's lesions are so painful. It's an open wound with urine going into it. And so the concept here is, what can we do to heal that wound? Well, number one, they can laser it and close it. The problem with lasering is that it will leave a little bit of scar tissue, which then restricts the ability of the bladder to expand and contract. But lasering has been done on tens of thousands of patients successfully. It's a great, quick way to close a wound. You just don't want to keep doing it over and over and over again, because you're going to end up with a lot of scar tissue. But a steroid injection into the center of the lesion is also equally successful, because when you biopsy a lesion, it's filled with inflammation, which then opens up a whole nother story here. And that is, what causes a lesion in the first place? Because what makes the lesion patient very different from all of us is that there's just this massive biological war happening in the middle of that lesion, that when they biopsy it, it's filled with inflammation. Your body is fighting something. And so we now have research which has directly linked viral infection to lesions. This was research that was originally done in Europe, where they were comparing the urine of patients with lesions as compared to the urine of patients without lesions. Bye, Tanya. See you later, honey. And Susan, hold that thought. So when you look at the urine of somebody with a lesion versus somebody without a lesion, patients with lesions often had visible, identifiable viruses swimming around their urine. And the virus that they found was Epstein-Barr from mononucleosis, or another virus called the polyomavirus. The polyomavirus is a virus we all have that's normally silent, but it gets turned on if you're immune compromised. So anyway, we had multiple studies from Europe showing more virus after virus after virus. And then a couple of years ago, these researchers in Europe were looking for virus. And then if they found virus, they were then treating them with an antiviral and getting good results. Well, the American researchers were just like stunningly quiet about this. for like 5 years. We're like going, okay, guys, what do you think of the European viral research? They were saying nothing. What we didn't know is that they were doing their own viral study. So the IC has had, and chronic prostatitis has had a fabulous research team at the National Institutes of Health, NIDDK, dedicated to IC and pelvic pain. It's gone now, I think. I believe it's all been shut down. But what they had was the samples of urine from hundreds of patients over time. And the MAP Research Network has given us really, truly profound insight into IC. So they went back and they started studying urine samples of their IC patients. And you know what they found? Yeah, they also found virus in about 5% of urine samples. And what is the percentage of IC patients who have Hunter's lesion? About 5%. So now we're just waiting for more information on antivirals, but this is exactly why the lactoferrin makes really good sense, because the lactoferrin is an antiviral. It's an antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. And it works by preventing pathogenic bacteria from using iron to grow. We all have lactoferrin in our body right now. It's in our tears. It's everywhere. But our lactoferrin levels decline as we get older. And so it's about supplementing our normal lactoferrin with some more lactoferrin to boost our immune system. So I think that that's exactly why lactoferrin is helping patients with Hunter's lesion. The other theory about what causes lesions is neuroinflammation. Nerves that become very, very irritated become very, very inflamed. They become very, very red, and they also can create wounds and lesions. And we have now linked that. We know exactly when that happens. What they have linked is, and this is okay. Here, let me get a drink. This is a little hard to explain. We have nerves that go from the bladder up to the spinal cord. We call that the visceral plexus. And those nerves rest on a structure. They rest on a ligament that holds them in place, holds them in position. That is called the uterosacral ligament. If that ligament, so like, let's see. So here's the ligament and here's the nerve, right? So here's the ligament, and here's the nerve right here, going here, okay? But what happens if the ligament is broken? The ligament falls away, and the nerve stretches downward. The nerve is now not supported properly, and that nerve becomes very, very inflamed. So we had a fabulous case study of a patient who had severe Hunter's lesions, who also had a severe prolapse, which happens when the ligament is broken. And when they went in surgically to repair the prolapse, her uterus was backwards. So the front of her uterus was facing back, and the back of her uterus was facing front, because a ligament was broken. So her uterus was free swinging like this. So when they tacked it back up and they got it in the right position and restored the proper, they got the front facing the front, something remarkable happened. Her lesions healed completely. She is considered a complete and total cure. And if you look at the research with this ligament issue, they've talked about bladder problems since 1991. The problem is urologists don't look for it. But we now have a formal proposal to consider this ligament issue, posterior fornix syndrome, a distinct phenotype of IC. So there are two things you want to rule out, honey. You want to rule out viral infection, and if you have any sign of prolapse, any sign of incontinence, where we're just dealing with muscles out of position, there is a chance that your lesion could be caused by that Thank you, Sandy. I made it. 65. I made it through the day without sobbing. I sobbed last night, 2 nights ago. I didn't sob during the day. Birthdays are hard. All right, so hold on a sec. So Rebecca says, I have 100 lesions. I take estrogen cream. Good. That gets your skin healthy. Now you're taking DHEA, helping your pain. Okay. And you've added bladder rest and PEA. The PEA is great. The bladder rest probably isn't going to do anything other than coat your bladder a little bit. But the lactoferrin, I would pick the lactoferrin over the bladder rest because we have research that shows that lactoferrin has the potential of calming that inflammation. Susan said, your new girl from Chicago here. Hello, one of my favorite cities, Chicago. I'm so looking forward to trying the lactoferrin. Is it in yet? I just put it back in stock, honey. It should be arriving tomorrow. Tracking shows it's in Oakland. So I put 10 bottles in stock. So you can go to our store and do it. Also, when I asked for estrogen cream, it's a dosage. So pretty much estrogen creams come in a 0.01 dosage, estradiol cream. It's very rare that it's going to be any higher or lower than that. And it's up to your doctor to tell you how often to use it. And that's based upon what your tissue looks like. I do mine two times a week. Katie says, so if it's viral, wouldn't colloidal silver and black seed oil help? No. Because different viruses do different things. Colloidal silver, man, 30 years ago, when we first started with our AOL IC support group, people were I had somebody come to my support group meeting here in Sonoma County who brought colloidal silver, who literally poured it in her eyes to prove that it was safe in front of us. It's like, what are you doing? Stop it. There's no natural role for silver in the human body. It is a metal. Now, there are a lot of people out there who believe that it has a medicinal effect. However, oh God, how long ago was it? It was like 10 years ago. The FDA issued a warning about colloidal silver being misused. The problem is that the human body does not really know how to get rid of the silver once you ingest it. And so what happens is it gets planted in tissue throughout the body. And it can end up on your skin, and your skin can turn silver, as people have. So I would never recommend colloidal silver. I don't know anything about black seed oil. I can tell you that the lactoferrin, I've got research that proves that lactoferrin can accomplish this with a very low side effect profile and a very high success rate. Linda says, Dr. Carl Creeder, University of Iowa, one of our top ICU researchers, starting you on 6 weeks of instils with DMSO August 1st. So far, the therapy isn't helping. What is your take on this? Not a fan of DMSO at all. Today, we focus, you have to understand that in the old days, I'm talking 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years ago, everybody believed that IC was a bladder disease. So patients were typically given Elmeron, they were given DMSO installations, and they were given an antidepressant and the diet. The problem is they just literally didn't work for the great majority of patients. You look at the research with Elmeron, it's considered a failure. The company likes to say it's successful, but when you look at the actual double-blind placebo-controlled studies that the company was not involved in, it was no better than placebo. DMSO has a very, very checkered history. And it has a checkered history because it was originally created, it was developed, it's a byproduct of the paper industry. They were looking for a way to transport kidneys from one donor to another. because they used to put it in ice, but the ice crystal destroyed the kidney. So they were looking for a safe way, a neutral solution that they could put a kidney in and drive it across country or fly it a couple states over for somebody who needed a transplant. Um, at that point in time, they all thought it was going to be a wonder drug. I actually interviewed the guy. His name was Alfred Globus, who did that research and wrote and played the critical role in getting it FDA approved for IC. Every single research study failed but the IC study. And the IC study was, not particularly good. I think that what we were seeing were researchers who had big dollar signs going, ooh, look at this, something new. Maybe it will work for all the diseases that everybody has. But the research eventually showed that it did not work, except in IC, it helped a little bit. Okay, but today we phenotype, right? So we no longer assume everybody has a bladder disease. Now we do something called phenotyping to try to figure out where you fit, because each patient group has its own treatment. So if you have Hunner's lesions, you've got to do Hunner's lesion therapy. DMSO is not a treatment for Hunner's lesion. If you've got estrogen atrophy, then your therapy is going to be using estrogen to produce more mucus and maybe doing a coating like a rescue installation. If you've got chemocystitis, so your bladder is being injured by a chemical, like from chemotherapy, the goal is to calm and soothe the bladder. And DMSO is not calming and soothing. DMSO has a lot of different methods, mechanisms of action. Then one of the things they say is that it causes, when you put it in, it causes all the mast cells to release histamine. So all the mast cells are emptied. Thus, the symptoms go away until the mast cells replenish. I mean, that's one of many, many theories I've heard over the years. But doing DMSO makes absolutely no sense for somebody with pelvic floor-driven symptoms. It makes no sense for somebody with widespread pain, where we're going to be doing things that target the central nervous system. I don't know Dr. Creeder personally. I think I've met him maybe once in the last 30 years. I might have seen him talk once. But when I look at that, that's just kind of an old guard approach. Today, our AUA guidelines talk about phenotyping, and we have to phenotype first and then use the right treatment. So I guess what I would ask him is, what is this going to do for my bladder? How will this help me specifically? And if you have Hunner's lesions, I would ask, what is this doing for a lesion? I'm not aware of any research that shows that DMSO does anything for a lesion. To me, it's just an old therapy. The far more popular bladder installation is a rescue installation with heparin and lidocaine. You got the heparin to coat the bladder wall. You got the lidocaine to turn the nerves off. It's called a rescue for a reason. It can rescue you out of a flare because you can walk out of the office pain-free. But having DMSO, you are not walking out of the office pain-free. It hurts. I've had it done. Worst mistake I ever made was trying to drive home with DMSO in my bladder. Please do not do that. You need to stay for the 20 or 30 minutes. You're going to hold it and pee it out and then drive home. God forbid you get stuck in a traffic jam like I did. That sucker hurt. So I would just want to know what your phenotype is, Linda. And then I would be focusing on phenotyping rather than chasing the symptom. And if you want to talk about it, feel free to give me a phone call. Listen, it's never my place to get between you and your doctor at all. He is an expert. He is a well-known IC researcher. And he may have a distinct reason why he wants to use that. That may be unclear. But my job is to give you some new questions to ask him about that. Would I do DMSO again? No, pointless for me because I'm pelvic floor driven. I'm going to put my money into physical therapy. Christy says, happy birthday. Thank you, Christy. All right, Susan, I'll see you later. Sarah says, will that help with urethra burning? Will what help with urethra burning, hon? So, urethra burning, we look for 6 or 7 different potential causes for urethra burning. The first thing we're going to look for is estrogen atrophy. The urethra is kind of the canary in the coal mine when it comes to the quality and health of your skin in your urinary tract. Your bladder and your urethra defend themselves with a really thick coating of mucus. They're mucus membranes. This thick gag layer, this mucus acts as a barrier and it pushes urine away from the fragile cells. So it has a distinct protective effect, okay? Unfortunately, mucus production is estrogen dependent. So when you're young and have a lot of estrogen, you have a lot of mucus. However, when you get older, or if you're on Lupron for endo, or you're on birth control, or you're on an estrogen suppressor for breast cancer, you're not going to have the estrogen, which means your body is not able to make that mucus, which means your urethra is not able to defend itself. And the urethra is the first part of the urinary tract to really start showing symptoms when your skin starts to get dry. So to me, that happened when I was 51 or 52, and it felt like there was a drop of urine stuck in my urethra that would not come out. And I threw the book at it. I threw everything I knew at these urethral symptoms, and nothing worked. And I finally threw myself on the mercy of my urologist, and he took one look. I mean, here, imagine I'm laying in the stirrups on my back. He's down there looking at me. I'm looking between my knees at him, and he goes, Jill. And I'm like, what? What did I do? He said, didn't you use the estrogen cream I prescribed for you last year? And I went, no. And he said, why? And I said, because in my brain, I'm 25 years old and I can't possibly have an age-related issue. And he laughed. He goes, okay, I get it. And he re-prescribed it. And once I started using it again, my urethral burning went away. So, and if I don't use it, it comes right back. So I'm very invested in using my estrogen cream. So concept number 1, quality and health of your skin. Concept number 2 is, are your muscles tight? If you feel like you're peeing through a needle, if you're stopping and starting, if you're not able to release urine easily, that's a sign that your pelvic floor muscles could be tight. And the pelvic floor or your levator ana muscle wraps around your urethra. So when it's tight, it squeezes the urethra, which makes it hard to relax to release urine. And the urethra gets very cranky. You could have, the urethra is known for being very sensitive to chemicals, anything from a menstrual pad to a cottonelle wipe. Chemical exposure can trigger urethral pain. If I put on a pair of underwear washed in Cheer or the old Tide, man, I had urethral burning within 5 or 10 minutes. There's also a gland halfway up the urethra called the periurethral gland. Sometimes that gets infected, and when that gets infected, that causes urethral pain. So I have a video in our IC 101 masterclass on urethral pain. I would encourage you to watch that. It's our free video series. You just go to our website, icnetwork.org. Masterclass is in the top menu. Just click on that, and I think it's episode 6 or 7. It's one of those videos. Watch that. That'll give you some insight. And then if you have any questions, feel free to give me a phone call. I'd be happy to talk to you. Maybe I can give you some good questions to ask your doctor about it. But most importantly, we need to know the quality and health of your skin. That's and then last but not least, urethral burning is common with active bladder infection. So if your urine feels very hot, like it's burning you, that's usually estrogen atrophy. But if you just in agony while peeing, that can be a sign of an active bladder infection. Dawn says, well, Linda said, I will ask him about phenotyping. Good. Excellent. I have no idea what he thinks, but I can tell you this is what the top people think now. Don said, birth control caused my urethral symptoms in 87. You have atrophy. Yeah. And estrogen of any type causes me more pain, not just for a little while, but for days. But Don, you might be misinterpreting something because when your skin gets super, super dry, anything you put on it has a chance of causing burning and pain. So the first time I used estrogen cream, it burned badly. I mean, it burned for like 3 hours, but I knew I was warned. The second time I used it, like 3 or 4 days later, it burned for maybe an hour. The third time I used it, it burned for maybe a half hour. Because every time you give that skin estrogen, it pulls the estrogen in and it's slowly building up mucus. So that burning is a direct reflection of the quality and health of your skin. And it will go away over a period of time if you persistently use it. The problem is that burning scares a lot of women and they're like, man, I'm not using that again. That hurt. So they just get drier and drier. And then every time they try to use it, it burns even more because their skin is getting worse and worse and worse. So the quality and health of your skin really, really matters here. The drier you are, the more painful it's going to be. And so we got to get that skin as healthy as possible. Now, in some cases, a compounded estrogen cream is a workaround. I use a compounded preservative-free estrogen cream, but I also use Vulva Balm. Where is it? Is it in here? This is my go-to. Let me tell you, anytime you have a little bit of vulvar discomfort, Vulva Balm is fantastic. You can use it every day. You can use it a couple of times a day. It mimics natural mucus. It's hydrophobic. It pushes urine away from the skin. And it's light. It's not greasy, and it doesn't stain. There it is. So it's an organic, very, very light olive, avocado, and sea buckthorn oil. So it's very, very light. And it doesn't stain anything. And it doesn't stick to your underwear or anything. So Carol said, you were surprised, you absolutely couldn't use it. Your doctor suggested Vaseline. Okay, so this is like Vaseline, but healthier, because Vaseline comes as a petroleum product. This is a natural oil. You should try this. You might be really happy with it. Okay, hold on a sec. And you guys, if I missed a question, please do not take it personally. It just means that Facebook scrolls constantly and I miss things. Okay, so hold on a sec. Sarah says, I'm 27. Okay, yeah, you've got the urethral burning and it's spreading through the pelvic area. My doc said that I'm feeling in my pelvic area because all the nerves are connected. So Sarah, your doctor could easily be right because there are a lot of nerves. The nerve comes here. Hold on a sec. I can show you. When we see symptoms in our 20s, teens and 20s, like vulvodynia, we're always going to be looking first at muscle and nerve injury. I had severe vulvodynia in high school. And I realized in hindsight, again, it was all because my muscles were tight because I'd broken my tailbone. So I want you to look at this picture here. This picture right here. So this is the pudendal nerve as it's coming off the spinal cord. And you can see how it interweaves. It's interwoven with muscles and nerves right there. See that? So it's 3 or 4 nerves, and then they merge together to go through the Alcock's canal, which is the sacrospinous ligament, under the sacrospinous ligament. And here's your obturator muscle right here. And then once it gets past the obturator, it starts to spread out again. So now the nerve breaks up and parts of it go up front towards your clitoris and others go back towards your rectum. But it can also go around the urethra also. So I would want to know do you have pelvic floor tension? Do you have pelvic floor dysfunction? Because that could be squeezing nerves affecting your urethra. Or is your skin reacting to something? Or are you on birth control and are your estrogen levels so low that your urethra can't make the mucus that normally protects it? We've got a great video on this on the IC Network in our IC Masterclass on urethral pain. I mean, my vulvodynia, I literally, it felt like somebody was rubbing my vulva with sandpaper, like rubbing the skin off. It was that bad. And of course, when you're the patient, you're going, it's a yeast infection, it's a yeast infection, but they never found yeast, ever. What they did find was very, very, very tight muscles squeezing nerves, but it took 30 years to realize that. Cindy said, "Did you know that estrogen cream is not covered by Medicare Part D or not that I figured out?" No, that's disturbing. That's very disturbing. Wow. That makes me think about the inequities of our current system and how women's health care is persistently ignored, especially now. And the use of estrogen cream is absolutely vital for the prevention of recurring UTIs and for your just comfort. I don't know. Here, hold on a second. No, I mean, it says right here that it varies by plan. Yes, estrogen creams are generally covered by Medicare Part D, but coverage varies by plan. Most Medicare prescription drug plans cover estradiol, a common form of estrogen, and many also cover other estrogen-containing medications like Premarin. This gets to, I've been bombarded by letters and emails from companies who want me to sign up for Medicare Part D. And the one that entertains me the most is United Healthcare, because I would never trust them with my healthcare. They are so horrific at denying coverage for essential care. And there is a female doctor. Here, hold on a sec. Let me see if I can find it. She's a doctor who specializes in reconstructive surgery for breast cancer. And she's specifically revealing all the problems she's having with United Healthcare. And the Twitter that she did today was crazy. She literally recorded, but only her side, a conversation with the doctor at United Healthcare that she was supposed to be able to discuss the care of a patient with to get surgery approved. And the doctor would not tell her his name or his specialty. So she was like, "Okay, have you ever treated breast cancer?" Well, I'm a doctor. No. Have you directly treated breast cancer? Yes. Have you ever done this surgery? No. Have you ever treated lymphedema? No. So you have no experience in this area and you're supposed to be giving me advice. I mean, that conversation was disgusting. I wanted to get her name for you because you guys need to follow her. Um, Let me see if I can find it. It's Elizabeth. I think it's Elizabeth. Let's see. Well, I will try next time I see her, I'll try to share. Well, I shared her on my Twitter feed. I'm sure I did. Did I? Hold on. Okay, I responded to it. Okay, wait. Hold on. Okay, here she is. Elizabeth Potter, MD. Elizabeth Potter, MD. Follow her on YouTube or Twitter. It is shocking, absolutely shocking what United Healthcare does to deny patient care. And she was calling on behalf of a doctor with breast cancer. So Elizabeth Potter, MD, on Twitter. Okay, hold on a sec. Lori said, honestly, Jill, you're such a lexicon of wisdom and knowledge. Your weekly share is a gold mine for understanding. Whoops. Oh, wait. Oh, my microphone just fell. Well, what am I going to do now? Hold on a second. Thank you, Lori. Thank you. My whole thing fell off my desk. Yeah, the screw loosened. Okay. Nope. I knew things were getting dicey today. Oh, wait. Nope. That's not the right screw. Okay. That's the right screw, but hold on. That's the right screw. Okay. Okay. I think we're back. This microphone, I just do not like this microphone at all. Stay. Okay. Thank you, Lori, for your very kind words. I feel like I need to start writing books, more books. Dawn says, I tried it for 2 weeks, twice a week, was in pain for a couple weeks after it. It wasn't just local pain. It felt like the pain went into the urethra towards the bladder. Tried compounded as well as traditional. So, Dawn, the question then would be, you might benefit instead from the estrogen pill that you put in your vagina, the estrogen tablet, which is not a cream at all. I mean, that might be an option. I mean, listen, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I can totally understand that. You're not the only one who has struggled. Our goal here, though, is to try to keep your skin as healthy as possible. We know that the drier your skin gets, the more painful it gets. And so walking away from estrogen is difficult. But some women have had to do that. And then that's where something like this vulva balm might be helpful. But in the end, doing therapies that will kind of coat your bladder and give your bladder a little bit of extra protection A chondroitin-based supplement like Bladder Builder or Bladder Rest or Cystoprotect would be a viable option to try to give the bladder a little bit of protection that it's lacking because you're in such estrogen atrophy. Vagifem, it's called Vagifem. That's the estradiol insert. Anne says you can use vulva balm externally. Yeah, I do it at the entrance to my urethra. It's called Medicine Mama's Vulva Balm. It's in the IC Network shop. It's under Feminine Hygiene, Medicine Mama's Vulva Balm. Debbie said, I had a cystoscopy. My bladder is beautiful, but I'm in pain daily and huge discomfort. I really don't know where to turn. Debbie, that's my story. Exactly. My bladder is beautiful on cystoscopies, and yet I had agonizing pain. Now we have to look beyond your bladder. There's something victimizing your bladder. Your bladder wall itself is healthy. That's great. We have to celebrate that. So it doesn't make sense to do bladder treatments right now. Like Elmeron, that doesn't make any sense at all. You have a healthy bladder, but you don't have a healthy muscle or nerve system, or maybe you've got a fibroid tumor pushing on your bladder. Something is victimizing your bladder. So have you had a pelvic floor assessment? Because the pelvic floor assessments are now considered the single most important diagnostic test. If your muscles are tight, what happens is when your muscles get tight, you enter a state of ischemia because the blood vessels and nerves travel through the muscles. So what happens is when the muscles get tight, they squeeze the blood vessels. So if the bladder is only getting half of the blood supply it normally should get, if it's only getting 10 units of blood when it needs over 20, are you going to have a healthy bladder wall? The answer, of course, is no. There's no way, because your bladder is being deprived of oxygen and nutrition. So a lot of IC patients have pelvic ischemia. I had pelvic ischemia. But the goal of physical therapy is to restore the blood supply. When we relax the muscles, the blood starts to flow again. And as the blood starts to flow again, the bladder starts to get healthy again. Pelvic ischemia. Okay. Carol said the pharmacy wanted to charge me $200 for a small tube. Carol, that normally means that they're trying to give you a brand name like Premarin. But a compounding pharmacy, like the old Women's International Pharmacy, can give you a 3-month supply for like around $70. That's where I get mine. Loretta says traditional Medicare is not covering most estrogen cream. Well, I'd love to say that's going to get better, but right now with our current administration, they are not valuing women's research. Like I said, I think the entire IC research program is shut down right now. There's no sign that it's alive and working, that's for sure. But I could be wrong. I was supposed to participate in the Center for Disease Control IC grant this year, and nothing. Took me 25 years to qualify and earn my credentials to get that grant. And it was approved. I was doing it with UC San Diego. It was approved last fall. And I'm pretty sure it's dead in the water. Debbie said, I begged my doctor for a cystoscopy and it was inflamed. He wanted to do a biopsy, so we did one and nothing was there on surgery day. I'm in pain weekly. Or Sarah said that. I'm in pain weekly. Nothing seems to help. It's truly mentally taxing. Last year, I even had blood in my urine, but you're never positive for infection. So, Sarah, you are an anatomical mystery to be solved. You need to be phenotyped. We need to know what the health of your muscles are. We need to know the health of your skin. Are we dealing with estrogen atrophy? And we also need to know if you're a widespread pain patient. If you've got IC, if you have history of IBS, vulvodynia, TMJ, migraines, fibro, if you have super sensitive skin, if you have a wicked sense of smell, then you are in the widespread pain phenotype, and that's all being driven by the central nervous system. This is also my phenotype. And so therapies for those of us who have multiple pain conditions are actually designed to calm the central nervous system. And so that's where the PEA, the Peora, would be incredibly interesting to try because it has such a good track record at calming nerves down. And then if something like that didn't work, then you could go to gabapentin and some of the traditional meds. But we now have some wonderful over-the-counter supplements that have been very, very helpful. So you got PEA, you've got Bladder Builder for the bladder wall phenotype, you've got Prevent to try to prevent recurring UTI. And of course, we have the new Femetry products too. The Femetry products are very, very interesting. Let me grab them so you can see them. Let's talk about these for a moment. Okay. Understand the reason why supplements are important, and the American Urology Association encourages you to try supplements, is because there are not a lot of traditional therapies that are considered safe or effective. They're just not. I mean, Elmeron is linked with retinal disease and inflammatory bowel disease. If they've got you on the antidepressants, that's linked to cognitive decline. And again, now that we have phenotyping, it's different. I see you on YouTube. Hold tight, hun. I promise you I will answer your question. Hold tight. So let's just look at this Femetry line of products real quick. I'm actually going to be sending it, and I've been writing an email on this. So their first product is called Flora Balance. And this is all about how to restore the biome after using antibiotics. And this is for people who might have recurring UTI. It's a powder. You dissolve it in cold water, take it 13 days. You do that every month. If you're prone to recurring UTI, it kind of resets the biome. So it has D-mannose in it to flush E. coli out, but more importantly, it's got the prebiotic inulin, and then it's got Lactobacillus reuteri, Acidophilus, and rhamnosus. So this is, to me, this is for somebody struggling with recurring UTI and or estrogen atrophy that puts them at risk of recurring UTI. But, don't assume you have a UTI. Let's wait and get a lab test first, maybe. Their second product is called Bladder Daily Comfort. So, again, we've got the bladder builders and the bladder S and the cystoprotects and the cystomends. This is very, very different. And as I said in the article I'm writing, if you haven't responded to the chondroitin-based supplements, then this is worth trying because this is tackling it in a different way. So it's got, instead of chondroitin, it has hyaluronic acid for the bladder wall, and it's not acidic. Hyaluronic acid is a building block of the bladder wall. It's got quercetin for an antihistaminic effect. Got glucosamine in it. It has a little aloe vera in it to soothe the bladder wall. But what makes this different from every other bladder health supplement on the market is it also has ashwagandha in it. And ashwagandha is all about reducing stress throughout the body. And so you think stress-induced flare? Bam, this would not be a bad thing to try. And then their last product is very similar to Preleaf. It's a bladder acid control product, but it balances acid with calcium glycerophosphate and a little bit of sodium bicarbonate. But it's really these two. So recurring UTI, and for this one, stress-induced flare and or just bladder wall driven flares. The Femitry 2 would be very, very interesting to try. So the blessing here is we have options. We didn't have these options 25 years ago. When I was diagnosed, we had nothing. And then eventually we had Desert Harvest Aloe, but that didn't work for me. We're all different. Again, I'm pelvic floor driven. None of these supplements would have helped me at first. Debbie says, use Single Care or Visory Health for your estradiol cream. It will be about $20. What a great suggestion. Thank you, Debbie. Single Care or Visory Health. Linda said, I've had United Healthcare for a couple years now, and they haven't denied any treatments for me. Thank goodness. I've only had issues with my supplemental insurance. Yeah, it was the CEO of United Healthcare that got murdered based upon denials, I think for a family member or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But if you follow Elizabeth Potter, I mean, you can see one doctor's constant begging for care from United Healthcare for patients struggling with breast cancer. I mean, it's utterly shocking. Dawn says, I'll talk to my urogyne about the Badgefem. I want it to work so bad. I know, honey. Janet says, I found out I have Tarlov cysts that are restricting the nerve roots. It's really affecting my bladder on the left side. There you go. So Janet, fantastic news that you found it. And so now we know that you have a nerve compression from a little pocket of spinal fluid. So they will often try to surgically repair that. Treating Tarlov cysts is a little bit tricky, but the fact that they're irritating a nerve, you probably have some neuroinflammation as well. So again, the PEA might help to keep the nerves calmer, maybe, hard to say. I mean, I'm really glad they found it, but I'm really sorry they found it, but I'm really glad they found it because at least now you know. Not your fault, you've done nothing wrong. Dawn says, hold on a sec. Dawn says, for those looking for affordable estrogen, try Mark Cuban's Cost Plus website. Oh, definitely. I'm glad you shared that, honey. Yeah, Mark Cuban has that affordable online pharmacy. Sherry says, I get my estradiol without compounding at Walgreens, covered by United Healthcare. Okay. It's different for everybody. Sometimes it depends upon how your doctor codes it also. You see how tight my neck is? You see how my head keeps tilting this way? I filmed 11 videos in a row last Thursday, and my neck was so bad afterwards. I'm going to start uploading them this week. Oh, God. Muscles were so tight. Sherry says, I use a prescription of lidocaine ointment on my urethra covered by my insurance. You can also get it on Amazon. Honey, we have, I just brought in a lidocaine gel in the IC Network shop. So we have a lidocaine gel too. Really nice one. Very affordable. Janet says, I use lavender oil on my urethra. It provides moisture that is lost during menopause. Okay. I don't have any experience using lavender oil down there. You can go back 1,000 years and women were using peanut oil in Asia. Just having an oil that will give that skin some protection is good. So the Medicine Mama's V Magic is the one that we suggest. I don't know how I'd feel about putting a lavender oil down there for me personally, but I'm really glad it's working for you. Marlia said, Jill, I thought I read something about ashwagandha and heart irregularities, but not 100%. Supplement sounds like just what I need. Just not sure about the side effects of the ashwagandha. All right, let's look. Remember, it's about dosage. I'm going to see. Ashwagandha offers several potential benefits for women's health, including stress reduction, improved hormonal balance, enhanced sexual function. It can also help with PMS symptoms, menopause, and cognitive function. It is an adaptogen. It's important to note that hold on. It has shown promise in reducing stress and anxiety. It can lower cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and improve subjective measures of stress and anxiety. However, it's important to note that the effects of ashwagandha are not immediate and can take several weeks to months to manifest. So here's National Institutes of Health. Let's see what this says. Is ashwagandha safe? Now, this is from the National Institutes of Health website. In the studies described above, there were no safety concerns when people used ashwagandha extracts for about 3 months. Common side effects of ashwagandha are usually mild and include upset stomach, loose stool, nausea, or feeling drowsy. Ashwagandha extracts have been linked to liver injury in some people, and it might affect how your thyroid, it might interact with thyroid meds. It could also interact with diabetes and blood pressure meds. Okay, when was this done? This was done December 2023. Let's see what the Mayo Clinic says. Also done in 2023. Dear Mayo, this is from Mayo Clinic. I struggle with stress and feeling overwhelmed. I'm 52, juggle full-time work as a wife and mother to a teenage daughter. I also began caring for an elderly relative. I will often snap at the slightest comment. Sleep is elusive. I'm not the biggest fan of medication, but I recently saw an ad for ashwagandha. Can you tell me what it is and if it may benefit me? So this is what Mayo Clinic says. Balancing family and work responsibilities can be challenging, but when you add in other things, such as caring for others, your stress burden can feel heavier. As a caregiver, it's important that you intentionally identify ways to care for yourself, cope and manage stress. Boy, isn't that the truth? Ashwagandha is unlikely to be the solution for that, but it may still be a helpful option. It comes from a shrub in India. They take the root of it. They say generally safe for most people, though some might get nausea or headache. Given your chronic stress, there is some evidence to support using ashwagandha. In fact, this is an area in which the plant has been studied the most. Ashwagandha has been given to people who live with chronic stress and has improved their stress scores. Stress have also shown improvement in cortisol levels. Another benefit is sleep. It doesn't appear to make people sleepy, but in people with anxiety, ashwagandha helps improve sleep quality. And you know, I mean, so you could Google it, read some of these articles, and if you have any doubts, talk to your doctor. Certainly shouldn't use it during pregnancy or if you're breastfeeding or anything like that. And the whole drug interaction thing is important to know too. Janet says, what would be the maximum to take for PEA? Well, the PEA studies are usually do like 1,000 milligrams a day. Here, let me look. But I am not a more is better person. I'm a less is more kind of person. So I always believe it's important to start with lowest doses. And if you want to work up gradually, you can work up gradually. But listen, companies love it when you buy products thinking you need to take more and more and more. There's a company right now that says if you're in a flare, double or triple the dose of their supplement. I completely disagree with that. So let me find the PEA interstitial cystitis study, and let's see. So they did 1,000 milligrams a day for 7 days. And then they went to 400 milligrams for 2 weeks after that. And then they did 200 milligrams for a couple of months after that. That was the protocol used in the IC study. So if you have the PEA that we have, you could do 3 a day for a week, then 2 a day for 2 weeks, and then 1 a day for a couple of months. That's the closest we can have to match that formula used in that study. Karen said, what are my thoughts on Hyprex? The literature mentioned it turning into formaldehyde as it dissolved. Hyprex is not a treatment for IC at all. It's not mentioned in the guidelines. It's never been mentioned as a treatment for IC. Hyprex is, in my opinion, an example of what a doctor can give you to get you out of their office. It's not mentioned in the guidelines as a treatment for IC at all. It's more of a, hey, she might have an infection, so let's give her something. Let's give her methenamine that will potentially reduce the symptoms of the infection, if it's an infection. The challenge here is that formaldehyde, so Hyprex is a urinary antiseptic. Its active ingredient is methenamine hippurate, which breaks down into formaldehyde in acidic urine. Formaldehyde is a pickling agent, guys. You store dead bodies in formaldehyde. I operated on animals stored in formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a carcinogen. So formaldehyde acts as a non-specific antibacterial agent that damages bacterial proteins and nucleic acids, ultimately killing or preventing the spread of the bacteria. It's not meant to be used for active infections. It's more preventive for UTI. And it relies on urine being acidic. So they want you to be drinking orange juice and stuff like that. The problem is that acid is going to irritate a wounded bladder. And it's not suitable for people with kidney, liver issues, or dehydration. In other words, it is only used for UTI. It is not recommended or used for IC in any guidelines, nor has it ever been. All right, I'm sorry. I'm coming over to YouTube now. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't remember what your name was. I think it might have been Mohammed, but correct me if I'm wrong. He writes, I have chronic non-bacterial prostatitis. The most common symptom is pain at the opening of the penis. Very common. You get irritation from citrus. What is the treatment? Well, you can alkalinize your urine so the acid isn't irritating your skin. That you're describing an acid-induced flare. That flare, your skin, for some reason, is more vulnerable to acid. So concept number one is you can reduce the overall effect of the acid by doing a calcium glycerophosphate or TUM to reduce the acid. But that does not address why. What's making your skin so vulnerable? Is chronic non-bacterial prostatitis an infection of the prostate tissue or the prostate nerves? There are 4 different categories for chronic prostatitis. The most common is chronic non-bacterial prostatitis, we now believe that the majority of these men have pelvic muscle injuries, that there is an injury to the pelvis that has affected muscles and nerves that are causing the symptoms that you're having. You say, after the doctor examined the prostate through the rectum, the examination was very violent and painful. After that of his diagnosis, did it affect the pelvic nerve? Well, it could have if it was really violent and aggressive. Yikes. I've tried all treatments for chronic non-bacterial prostatitis. Is natural treatment helpful? The supplements would be very interesting to try. I mean, the PEA to calm nerves down would be perfect sense. The lactoferrin, and on the off chance you might have some sort of infectious process, would be very interesting. The PEA to calm nerves down. Some doctors say we have a strategy for treating chronic non-bacterial prostatitis by injecting the prostate with an antibiotic and ozone. Is that true? In some clinics, yes, but medical care is different in each country. After every urination, I feel pain and burning at the opening of my penis. Is this continuous use of lidocaine harmful or have side effects in the long term? I don't believe it's harmful, but that's a good question to ask your doctor. Because it's temporary and it wears off. I think you just have to understand that whatever base it's in has the potential of irritating your skin. So make sure it's in a neutral jelly base. Is there any other lidocaine, anything other than lidocaine that relieves pain and burning after urination? Well, now if we have to silence the nerve, and the lidocaine silences the nerve. If the doctor thinks you're nerve driven, they can do a nerve block. Is it true that interventional radiology treats chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Interventional radiology, they have a chance to look at blood vessels. They have a chance to, they're a neutral expert on all things pelvis. And so having an interventional radiologist examine your pelvis is not a bad idea, especially if you're not responding to treatment. Is injecting the prostate from the inside with an antibiotic needle mixed with ozone gas useful? I don't know, hun, because that's not a treatment that I'm familiar with. What are the medications or treatments for chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Well, today, now that we understand that many of these men have pelvic injuries, the most important diagnostic workup, aside from checking for infection, is to check the health of your pelvic floor. I want to know if your pelvic floor is healthy or not, because if it's not, then the treatment's going to be physical therapy. And then your next challenge is going to be, is there a physical therapist who can work with you in your country? I think the last time I looked, the nearest pelvic floor specialist was in Greece. But that might have changed, because I know that there was a pelvic pain conference in Saudi Arabia last year. So we might have more physical therapists who are getting trained. I don't remember what country you're in, hun, or if you're in Saudi Arabia or Qatar. Lori says, what about pyridium for urine pain? Pyridium never touched my pain. And I had terrible bladder pain. Pyridium can help some patients, but generally for mild pain, that's the azo bladder pain relief tablets. Pyridium is the pharmaceutical prescription. Azo is the over-the-counter version. That's the stuff that turns your urine orange. However, it has now, using it long term has never been suggested, and now we have research that has linked it to cancer. So some patients do pyridium every day. Please don't do that. I mean, there's now very credible evidence that has made an association with cancer, I think in laboratory animals, but it was significant. All right, I got to straighten my head out. Stretch, my friends, stretch. I just started doing some chest weights. Well, I did it for the first time last week and I paid the price. I didn't do it today, but things are getting better. Does continuous ejaculation of semen contribute to the alleviation or treatment of chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Is the doctor said to use it? Is this true? Well, it's not going to help a pelvic floor problem. It might make pelvic floor tension worse. I mean, if you keep masturbating, I mean, your fundamental question here is finding the underlying cause. Is it muscle driven? Is it nerve driven? Or is it an infection in your prostate? And you don't have an answer to that question. So you're doing what I call the kitchen sink approach. And it's not working for you. So it's time to take a step back and go, okay, we need a little bit more information here. Are my muscles healthy? Is my prostate healthy, or do I have benign prostate hyperplasia? Is my skin healthy, and are my nerves healthy? And then based upon that, that's what's going to select your treatment. Does prostate massage treat or relieve chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Well, the challenge with the prostate is that, you know, um, it has very tiny drainage ducts. And so those ducts often get blocked. And so what happens is fluid can kind of build up in the prostate. And the same happens in the female prostate, the periurethral gland. And so what happens is you've got like a festering low-grade infection or something like that that just cannot drain because the ducts are blocked. And so the reason why they do prostate massage is to try to express some of that fluid so that they can culture that fluid to see what's going on. I would compare this to, let's say you have a deep cyst in your, let's say you have a deep infection or cyst on your leg. And it's under the skin and it's swelling, it's getting bigger and bigger, it's getting more and more painful. And you know that once it drains, it will feel better. But you have to wait for it to break open, or you try to pop it yourself, or you go to a doctor who might numb it and stick a scalpel in it and open it up, and whoosh, out comes the infection. Okay. So infections that linger are painful. Expressing that fluid to get rid of the infection is obviously very, very important. But your question is, can they keep doing that? Can they keep massaging it? And the answer is, I just don't know. It's the only way to get access to this fluid to culture it. I don't know the effectiveness of prostate massage as a treatment. Is taking diclomax useful in cases of chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Well, let's look it up. So DICLO, well here, CLOFENAC. Let's see if there's any research. The molecular targets of diclofenac differs from ibuprofen to induce apoptosis and epithelial mesenchymal transition due to an alteration of oxidative stress management. Holy for it looks like it's used to reduce pain more than anything else. You're gonna have to rely on your doctor, hun. I am not an expert in this area. I'm sorry. Alrighty. So we have been on for 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours. I am happy to stay here as long as you have questions for me. I can also play a video if you would like to see a video. There was something I was going to show you guys. What did I do with it? But it is getting late. Oh, we got a fire. That's not good. Oh, they stopped it. Okay, that's good. Oh, God. Okay. All right. So I think we are naturally winding down here. Let me make this offer. Would anybody like to come into Zoom to talk to me directly? If you would like to come into Zoom, I would be more than happy to talk with you and you can talk to me and we can have a little group chat. Otherwise, I think we are near the end of this meeting. So I am going to say goodbye to YouTube. Bye, YouTube. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next week. Thank you for your birthday wishes.